morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and thanks for stopping by. Our dedicated team will guide you through with the latest updates and theories at Starbase, Texas. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon for future streams.
Zach, you're muted.
Oh, sorry about that, everybody. I was trying to handle some stuff in the background, so I was muted. But yeah, my name is Zach Golden. Welcome to another Starbase Weekly live stream. Sorry for the rough start to the show, but having a bit of technical issues today that we're going to have to work through. I'll probably get into that a little bit more later. But in the meantime, I will go ahead and introduce our other guest for today. So thanks for joining us, Jake.
Hey again, everyone. It's good to be back, and it's good to have Zach again for another week. And yeah, I'm looking forward to discussing this week's photos for the rest of the show. And with that, I'll pass it over to BJ.
I'm not sure if we have BJ with us, but if we do, I'm sure he'll chime in here in a moment. In the meantime, yeah, as I was saying, having a bit of technical issues today. Yeah, really having some problems with OBS just not working at all. So usually I'm able to like quickly swipe through images without you guys kind of seeing what's happening in the background. But today you guys are going to see a lot of, I guess, what I do in the background because I'm not going to be able to make it smooth. So may end up having to jump between windows quickly like this. So you'll see my desktop in the background, which is at least for me, really annoying, but hopefully y'all will be able to bear with that, and we'll get through today's show, and I'll have that fixed for the next one. Let's see, I'll check in with BJ to see if he's got his mic going. And that looks like a negative. But we also have Astro Joe with us, who will be doing questions and donations today. Astro Joe, thanks for joining us.
Hello, thanks for having me back, Zach, and good to be here with y'all. Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, Starbase friends around the world. Let's enjoy episode 112 of Starbase Weekly.
Awesome. And yeah, it's been another eventful week. As most of you know, SpaceX performed the first static fire test of Booster 11 yesterday, and Mauricio actually has his live stream cameras that are set up around the site. So we have a few good shots of that. I'm going to show them now, then I'll probably show them again later in the show because people tend to join late. So yeah, we'll go ahead and take a look at those three different views that Mauricio has for us. And I don't know, maybe I can get the audio to come through on this since I'm not streaming this the same way I normally do. We'll see if this audio comes through. Were y'all able to hear the audio? I'm sure it was possibly pretty obnoxious.
Yeah, not too bad.
It was,
All right, cool.
Yeah, it was loud. That's for sure.
All right, I'm gonna leave the audio off for the next one because I have to mute myself in order to do it. So, yeah, we'll just go ahead and play this one. Wow, it's just crazy how violent it looks from this close-up view. I'm gonna play that one back one more time too. Yeah, that's awesome. And then we have one more angle here as well. This one is from Highway 4. Interesting stuff there that I was going to point out later, but now I'm sure most of you may have just noticed that. So I'm noticing as this static fire happens that we see some stuff being ejected off the right side of the screen right here. See if I can bring that back a little bit. That looks like a pretty large chunk of something.
Hey, Zach, I don't know if the video is actually still showing up properly.
No?
No, it seems to have frozen. I could
Okay.
hear the sound just now, but the video doesn't seem to be changing.
I can fix that pretty quickly. Let's go and do that. How's that?
Yeah, that changed.
Cool. Yeah, so yeah, in this angle you can really see there's a few black objects that go flying off of the side of the screen right there. And if I slow it down or kind of like step through it, you can see whatever it is looks pretty large. Kind of reminds me of the IFT1 days when we had all that concrete flying, although we don't really know what exactly that is. But what we do know is the flyover images from today that we're going to be viewing today are from yesterday morning, which was before the static fire. So maybe we'll be able to look around at the area around the launch site, see if there's anything random that's kind of just sitting around there. As maybe we can pinpoint what it is that would have gone flying like that. Hopefully it's not any, concrete or something like that. Definitely didn't look like steel, but we'll revisit this when we get to the launch site. And for now, we will go ahead, I guess, and start over at the Massey's site, which this is a pretty nice image right here. A lot of the images are going to be slightly dark today just because of the them being taken early in the morning. So hopefully that won't be too much of an issue. I'm sure if some of y'all have some different settings on your TVs, if you're watching on TV, you may be able to go to like dynamic mode or something like that just to help yourself out a little bit. But I will also try and just choose some of the images that are a little brighter than the others just to help us out. So yeah, what do we have going on today at Massey's? Of course, I know most of us have our eyes out on this flame trench, so I guess we'll go ahead and start there. I'm gonna go to another image right here. Let me see if this is another thing y'all usually are not able to see, this thumbnail bar on the bottom, which I'm usually scrolling through trying to find the right image. Maybe this one will help. Yeah, so Jake, I guess if you want to start us off, what are you noticing different today from last week?
Well, so obviously the first thing you're noticing is the trench is now a hell of a lot deeper. And in certain angles, you can see that they have actually broken through all the way underneath the big concrete slab going over the top of the trench. Not quite sure if it's at full depth yet, but I think they're starting to get pretty close.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like it from, I was trying to find another angle, maybe closer up. This was the one I was using before. Yeah, you can definitely see all the way underneath it. So it looks like they've, as you said, I don't think they're at the full depth yet, but they're definitely getting there. It seems, I'm surprised there's not like a huge pile of dirt somewhere, but I'm guessing they're trucking it away as soon as they're removing it. But yeah, you can see the excavator down there still digging out more of that dirt. I'm actually kind of surprised that they don't get all the way finished down here first and then kind of, I guess, pour all the concrete they need first down here and then work their way back up. I feel like just from my point of view, that might be easier to do it that way instead of trying to excavate the whole ramp first. But yeah, it's looking like they're making a ton of progress back there. We still are only seeing one side of this ramp that leads up to the actual the trench, I guess. Still waiting to see if they're going to put this sort of, I guess, retaining wall on the other side. But the way it kind of looks right now, I think there's maybe a chance that this is only a one-sided wall right here, because it seems like they're building the dirt or the gravel all the way up to grade right here. So it's just a solid ramp on the backside. And then I guess like a retaining wall on the front side right here. But they've also started to, it looks like just recently poured all the concrete around all of here. I think some of this was still not really paved as of last week, but it looks like they're making some good progress with that. And with the actual delivery system for the water deluge, it looks like we have some more progress back there as well too. Jake, last week they only had 3 of these smaller tanks in here, right? I think this white one right here is new.
Yeah, that's a brand new tank that's turned up since last time, and there has been even more pipework installed amongst all those tanks as well. I mean, one of the bits of pipework you'll notice is new is that little 90-degree bend coming off the top there. Yeah. And it does seem to be pipework coming from
The backside?
underneath. No, from the actual storage tanks on the right there. There
Right,
seems to be
down
new
here.
pipework coming from, that new pipework too. Unclear what the purpose of that is just yet. But yeah, there's definitely still more to come, because obviously they haven't actually connected any high pressure gas cylinder stacks to the storage tanks yet.
Yeah, one thing I'm noticing on the backside here, I guess my question last week was whether or not these are actual tanks or if these are kind of like manifolds that will have inlets on the backside right here. And it's tough to see, like, I can't tell if this is a cap or if this is a nipple for a pipe to come off of. Like, this almost looks like a T fitting or a manifold going across the back of all 4 of them, but it's tough to tell.
Yeah, Zach, I got my stuff working now, but yeah, the gray manifold that's on is kind of obscured there, connects to that pipe, that new pipe that's running parallel to the big tanks underneath. It goes across the top, and last week we saw just kind of the 90-degree corner bends, and then they've added on both ends of it this week.
Okay. Yeah, so that pipe goes underneath here. I think what connects to this one right here, and then you're saying.
And it goes up and over to a smaller manifold that comes off the gray ends of all 4 of those tanks. And
Okay.
then the pipe dead ends heading towards the trench underneath the 3 tanks. It doesn't. It's hard to tell, but I don't think it goes into the tanks.
Yeah, this one's going to be pretty interesting. Definitely a lot different from the one at the launch site, obviously, with not having a steel plate, but more of an actual flame trench bucket, I guess. And this is very similar to what they have at a lot of test sites. I think the one at Stennis is similar to this, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so, yeah. And yeah, before we move away from this area, I got a question for you. Do you think we might see a bigger version of this deluge farm for the next pad, or do you think they'll just recreate what they've already got for the first pad?
Oh man, that is a tough question, actually. Let me. I'm going to bring up some images here on the side on my other screen. See if I can find some images that have recently been posted of Pad 39A. I mean, I guess we might as well talk about that along the way as well today. Or maybe if one of y'all are able to find one in the background and post it in the live comms. Yeah, so I mean, there's been a lot of discussion about the Pad 39A complex. You know, they have torn down all 6 legs for the launch mount that we were expecting to be installed out there. And, you know, there's a lot of speculation on what the reason for that is. You know, it kind of ranges from people thinking that they're going to, you know, pretty much delete the entire Starship pad out there, all the way to, you know, installing a flame trench. And then the simple explanation, which is one that I've been kind of assuming for I guess since day one, is that they would end up needing to redo the foundation at pad 39A. And because they don't have a launch mount on top of those legs, it's a little bit more difficult to actually redo that foundation work without demolishing those legs first. So yeah, and I'm just looking online over here. I don't have a updated image of it. However, I can at least bring up just a shot from Greg Scott on Twitter. This one's actually from a few months ago before they started demolishing those legs. But yeah, you know, a lot of people have seen some things online, and if any of you follow me on Twitter, yeah, I've been talking to Alex from NSF about this. You know, a lot of people have suggested that they're going to move the entire tower, which I guess it's worth addressing here that that's not something that's really possible. So these towers, and this is a great image to show right here. So you can see the hollow area on the inside of these legs. At least you can tell that there is a hollow area in the middle. And there's also these alignment pins that allow them to slot in together once they stack them on top of each other. So once these are all stacked on top of each other, they actually pour concrete through each of the columns. And yeah, shoot, I'm trying to see if you can see any of the holes for that on this image. I don't think we can.
Yeah, that back corner, I think there's a dark spot at the base of the column that you can see.
Right here?
Port. Yep. Yeah, that's the port that they use for filling.
Yeah, so once all of them are stacked, I guess going even deeper into the process, these plates down here are used to actually join the columns together after they're stacked. And then after that, they weld the columns, each of the columns to each other. And then once they are welded around all four columns, then they use these ports to actually inject concrete down into the columns. And I used to know the actual dimension of these. I think they're about like somewhere around 4 feet, if not more. You can kind of see a guy down here for human scale. But there's a lot of concrete in these tower columns. And so this is essentially a concrete tower that is enclosed in steel. So you can't just unbolt it and take it apart and reassemble it somewhere else. Like once it's completed, in my opinion, it's a permanent structure at that point. And the only way to you can't really relocate it. You can just demolish it if that's what you really wanted to do. But once it's there, it's there. So I think the only alternative would be to actually somehow remove all the concrete from inside the columns, which I don't even think that's possible, or cut off each section one at a time and like disassemble it piece by piece if they were going to take it down. But on that note, I don't think there's any indications, at least that I know of so far, that would suggest that they're going to actually remove this tower at 39A. And so I think all of the changes that we're seeing are just surrounded around the actual launch mount itself. And so, you know, there is a possibility of them changing how many legs there are, or potentially connecting somehow the base of the launch mount to the actual tower so that they're a connected structure, so that if one moves, the other moves, which would kind of help out with alignment issues that they've had at Starbase as far as shifting of the tower or the launch mount, which makes it so that it's a little bit more difficult to align the ship with the booster. But getting back to Jake's question, I guess the other alternative would be a flame trench down here. And I don't know. I feel like we haven't really seen enough evidence to suggest that they're not happy with the water-cooled flame deflector system at Starbase, and for there to be a need to actually completely remove that system and go with something else. I think, if anything, the things that we have seen evidence of is the QD, the booster QD, constantly needing flex hoses replaced. Obviously, the Raptor chill collection system having to be replaced every single time, and potentially parts of the upper surface of the the launch mount deck having to be replaced. So I think things like that are things that they're trying to redesign around how they can make it so they don't have to do a month of maintenance every single time. And then obviously just getting the foundation properly prepared for all of the stuff that's going to go on top of it. Because this foundation of this tower is basically the same as the one at Starbase, which had to be massively upgraded after IFT1. So in my opinion, they're going to do something similar like that. I don't know if there's even room for a flame trench here. I wonder if we have an overhead aerial view.
I think the thought process with it possibly being a flame trench instead from now on is more to do with directional control of the shockwaves. Because obviously we've seen that the steel plate does work at Starbase. It holds up quite nicely. But the only thing with that current design at the moment is you've got shockwaves being shot in 6 different directions between the legs at the moment. The
Right.
initial shockwaves but then with a flame trench, you've only got one direction away from vital hardware where the shockwaves would go.
Right.
I think that would be probably I'm not saying it will happen, but if there was a change to a flame trench for future orbital pads, that would probably be the reason why, to control the direction of the shockwaves.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I feel like this is going to be very interesting to see what they end up doing. Whatever they do here, I guess the real question is, at Starbase, they built the launch tower at Starbase and then constructed this one nearly identical. And they did that without really fully knowing what the outcome of the design would be, like if it was going to be sufficient enough to allow them to do rapid turnarounds. But now that they know that they need to make changes, it'll be interesting to see if they make that change once, whether that's going to be the second tower at Starbase or if they do it down here first, and just verify that it's going to be what they want it to be before they change all the other towers to be the same. I think that's going to be very interesting. And I hope that that they do this at Starbase first before they finish this one. So yeah, that was a pretty big segue there. I'm going to go back over to Massey's. Actually, I know that people are going to have some comments on this part, so we may as well address some questions and donations at this point before we continue. Do you have any questions saved up right now, Astro Joe?
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. Been busy in chat. Wanted to thank Darth Lawrence for gifting 5 memberships before the stream started. And thank Jim Cabot for a gifted membership, as well as Miss Jax and Jap Kuipers. Thank you all for your support. Also got a Sharpie $10 super chat train starting. Choo choo. We do have some questions regarding Massey's, however. Bill Lyer, Booster 12 and Ship 30 were the last to cryo. They could be launching by July. Will Massey's be ready to cryo other ships and boosters by then?
I should imagine so. Yeah. I think
What was that, Jake?
I think just the main reason they're not doing cryo testing at the moment is because of that ship static fire stand being constructed right between the 2 pads. And yeah, I think they just want as little disruption as possible in terms of getting this whole static fire pad constructed currently. I know each cryo test doesn't actually take that long, and it's only like 3 days at most. But obviously, if you keep doing cryo testing at Massey's, you're 3 days here, 3 days there, that's all going to add up in the end, and that's going to start biting in to how long it's going to take to finish construction of this static fire pad. But yeah, I think they'll probably be ready for cryo testing again quite soon, I'd say.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the good news is, as you mentioned, that Ship 30 has already done its cryo test, and sorry, I think Booster 12 did he? I don't think.
Yeah, Booster 12 and 30
and
have
Ship
done
30
cryo testing. Yeah,
right. So, I mean, there's a list of things that are all depending on each other. You know, I would say one of their biggest priorities is to start the second launch pad at the launch site. But in order to do that, they need this to be completed, and they also probably want to continue on with cryo testing and all that stuff. But in order to do that, they also need this to be completed. So I think this is holding up a lot of things currently, but you know, for that reason, they're probably avoiding those cryo tests so that they can, as Jake said, focus entirely on this and get as much done as they can before they absolutely need to start testing vehicles again. But on that note, I mean, both. Go ahead.
I mean, they've got a buffer at the moment with which vehicles are ready, so it's not that much of a concern just yet. Not being able to do cryo testing right now.
Right, and you know, on that note, I don't think there's anything really in the way of them doing ship static fires, or sorry, ship cryo tests, boosters. So basically, you know, none of this stuff, as far as I can tell, has really been changed. The problem is that, you know, I think this is partially in the way of if they wanted to do a ship cryo test. So I think potentially once this is out of the way, they could return to doing that. And most of those cryo tests happen overnight. We're not really 100% sure if they do 24-hour ops with construction down here or not, because we don't really get to see what happens at night down here. But, you know, I imagine that if they really needed to do a cryo test, it wouldn't interrupt things that much as long as they perform them at night. Cool. Any other questions?
Indeed. KMS asking, could there be a berm at the end of the trench in order to direct the flames up and not go straight into the river and Mexico?
I mean, I don't know how much a berm is necessarily going to help. I mean, you already have a ramp that's sending it up at, I don't know, maybe 35 degrees. So it's not like it's going horizontally into Mexico. It's going to go up and over. I think that whole Mexico question is still a big one. Like, we don't really know how that works, how they, if they have to provide them with like notifications of when this land over here needs to be vacant or something like that during tests. I mean, we don't really know how that works. So that's a tough question to answer.
For sure. Jimmy Mack asking, will there be any water left in the flame trench after static fire, or will it all be converted to steam? Wondering about how it would be removed.
That's another good question. I'm not sure how it works at other launch sites, but I imagine similar to the orbital launch pad, the water continues running shortly after the engines turn off. So I imagine there may be some water left at the bottom of the trench after the test is done. So with that said, I wouldn't be surprised if there was some sort of pump, almost like a sump pump to like pump out any of the water that's remaining down there. Yeah, I highly doubt they would want to just leave it there. So it would probably make sense to actually pump it out or something.
Well, and surely it's going to be watertight enough that even natural rainwater is going to collect down there. So I think that there's naturally going to be some kind of pumping system to get water out of the bottom.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Any other questions?
Yeah, I want to thank Cosmic First for a $5 super chat to get this train on the rails there, and Yazada for a $5 super chat. Okay, I'm on board. Rocket Prophet, thanks for your $10 super chat, but I'm not getting into any shenanigans today. We're going to try and keep it professional, buddy. All right, SJ, have the tanks for the fuel farm been installed at Massey's for the flame trench?
Sorry, have any what been installed?
I think maybe might mean the water tanks for the fuel farm installed at Massey's for the flame trench.
These water tanks?
That's, I believe, would be the question. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so they do have the water tanks. What we haven't seen yet is the high pressure gas tanks that will force the water out. And that's kind of just assuming that that's the way it's going to operate. There's a chance that, given that it's not a flame deflector, but it's just an actual true water deluge system where it's just dumping water into here and not actually trying to like deflect the flames using the force of the water, they may potentially be able to get away with just installing some high flow pumps instead. But again, this is a lot of water to try and move that quickly. So there is a good chance that we may end up seeing those high pressure gas tanks, but we just haven't really seen them start that yet. Matter of fact, these over here kind of look like water pumps, or at least some sort of manifold. But I don't know, if this was for pumping water, I would expect larger pumps. But this could be part of that system as well.
All right, and Ernest CF asking, does the flame diverter at Massey's have water jets?
Yeah, it'll. So at the moment, you'll see the parts of the flame bucket are, yeah. So the actual trench itself, I imagine there will be outlets in there somewhere shooting water, but the majority of the water will come out of holes drilled in the flame bucket. That's what you can actually see being done at the moment to the sections of it, where they're on their sides on the ground. You'll see scissor lifts going up to it, and yeah, that's where they're creating the holes for that.
And on that note, they have received the third section that we mentioned last week, which is the middle section, I believe. So these two are the outer sections, and this goes in the middle. So it is quite a wide flame bucket, and I think they're getting close to being able to actually install this. Really, they just need to finish excavating the area underneath here, and then we'll probably see them start to do that here soon. I almost thought I saw some rebar down there, but I don't think that's what it was. Sorry, got distracted there a little bit. But yeah, so continuing on with that, the actual test stand is nearing completion as well too. They ended up putting that cross beam, at least one of them, installed. I think there's another one back here as well too. It's tough to see from this side.
Yeah, you can kind of just see it there underneath. You're kind of outlining it there, but yeah, they're both installed.
Yeah, and I think that, let's see, I'm looking around. I don't see any more of those on site.
Yeah, we haven't seen any more. My suspicion is that there's going to be two more for the other to span the other two legs. It'll be just a little shorter. I think that has to do with my speculation that the SPMT movement will be in one direction for transport and the other direction for actually putting it up on the stand. But I think there's still question marks as to whether I'm on the right track on that or not.
Yeah, I mean, I personally would think that these two are the only ones they're going to use, because you could lay this across the SPMTs, and so you're driving, you're transporting it along this axis, and then once it's on top, if you want to get the service platform underneath it, where's the service platform? Where did it go?
It's over in the left corner by the LOX subcoolers.
Oh, is this it right here?
Yep.
Okay, it looks different when it's not on top of those pipe stands. Yeah, so in order for this to get underneath it, I would imagine that you wouldn't want these cross beams on there, especially if you're going to try and drive like the Raptor, one of the Raptor service vehicles on top of this. I would imagine you wouldn't want something in the way of that on this side, so you're only driving in from one direction. But yeah, I mean, on that note, if it was on three sides and not existing on the third side or the fourth side, that would make more sense to me.
Yeah, I think the question though is that right now it's sitting 90 degrees offset of how it's going to sit on the over the trench. So, and to allow the SPMTs to go up the ramp, you would end up having one blocking the access for a service truck to get up there. That's a great point that I hadn't even really thought about. yet for that ability to put one of the Raptor installed trucks underneath for engine swaps on site. Although they could probably they could bring that in from one of the sides potentially after it's up there.
Yeah, that is true. And I think the other thing that we're not 100% sure on is if this is the actual top surface of the pad, like if the clamps for the ship are going on top of this. I almost feel like I can see them right here, but I don't know. I think these may actually be mounting points for another ring to go on top of this. And I guess we should probably check in on that other structure that they have going on down here, which is probably unrelated. But they do have this ring down here, which I thought may possibly go on top of the actual test stand. But also now now that we're seeing this, it may go on top of this down here. I think we mentioned that last week. But on that note, it does seem like they've started to install the actual legs for this and the curved sections of it as well. And now that we can kind of see how it looks at this point, do you guys have any alternate theories on this, or still thinking that this is going to be for a essentially can crusher?
I'm still in the opinion that it's an upgraded replacement for the can crusher. I think there's too much evidence with how the top hat has got some additional bracket mounts. There's 5 of them around it that kind of that should in theory line up with the 5 towers of the outer ring. I think there's a lot of how it's actually going to look in the end is different, but I'm pretty firmly in thinking that it's a new can crusher of some sort.
Yeah, I fully agree with that one as well. I do think there is still a lot of parts to come to. I reckon it's going to be at least double the height that we're seeing now, I think.
Really? Oh, so you think there's something going on top of these?
Yeah,
To raise the height?
Yeah.
Well, we can see just above the ring that they're constructing that there's 5 embeds down on the ground that looks like a ring is going to be constructed. Actually, there's smaller ones up by that scissor lift, kind of like how they've got the partial bottom ring. If you go, it's half off the image right now, but above that stand towards the clearing, there's 5 embeds down there. Some of us believe that there's going to be the final top ring structure is going to get built on that and then lifted on top. But like Jake said, I think there's also going to be a taller leg between what we see and whatever that ring may be.
Right. Yeah, this is interesting. And it seems like they're still missing 2 of these columns. I don't see them around here. I do see the curved sections down there.
Yeah, the third one showed up, I think, midweek or so. But yeah, we saw all 5 of the curved connector beams are here. We're just waiting on a couple more columns of those first legs to get on site.
Right. Yeah, this will be interesting. I mean, if it is a can crusher type structure, I would imagine that it'll only be used for test articles because you would need too large of a crane in order to lift full-sized vehicles onto here. So I imagine it would just be used for smaller test tanks and stuff like that, if that's the case. Because this doesn't obviously look like it has the ability to roll the whole thing into position over here. So.
Yeah, it's definitely looking more and more like while we don't really think a crane's going to be needed on site for the static fire systems, it does seem like there's going to need to be a crane here. We're thinking maybe if it's not too tall, that the Grover crane could maybe be able to do these types of lifts since they're just test articles potentially.
Right. Cool. What else do we have at Massey's that we should touch on?
I got a question from Seabreeze.
Yeah.
Regarding the flame trench stand, doesn't the ship trench stand pads have bolts to secure the stand? Doesn't the new trench give SpaceX the ability to have longer static fires, and wouldn't the pad need to be secured and not able to move?
So we haven't fully seen Well, from a distance we've seen it, but we haven't seen close up the actual interface between the stand and the concrete at the top of the trench. But from what we can see, it looks like there is a flange on the bottom of each leg that would just be bolted straight down into that concrete. Yeah, I don't think there's going to be any issue of everything being held down properly during those tests. It should all be fine.
Yeah, that's going to be very interesting to see because, I mean, from at least from this angle, these look like regular embeds that you would actually weld the stand onto. However, if that was the case, I don't really see a reason for these cross beams. So it more than likely would be bolted down in that case.
Yeah, I'm thinking that there's still a leg component that we haven't seen. When we saw that beam last week, we thought potentially it would be partway up the leg. It seems like it's been installed right at the bottom of the legs that we see, because what's below them is just some construction pipe stands at the moment. So to get SPMTs under, it's going to have to be elevated. My suspicion is that there'll be permanent legs on those embeds that have some kind of bolting or pin mechanism that locks into the mobile portions.
Right.
And then Sharpie is wondering any estimates to how deep the flame diverter trench is.
So I think the actual rebar cages that went down there were, oh man, I can't remember off the top of my head. I want to say they were at least 60 feet long. They were probably way longer than that. I had that written down somewhere, but I don't know off the top of my head. It's a bit tough to guess. Give me a second, see if I can find something here. Yeah, it's going to take me a while to find that because I would have to go through my DMs with Ryan where we were talking about this stuff.
Yeah, from what I think you are right about the heights of those. I do vaguely remember that figure as well.
Yeah, it sounds about right because I think when we saw some of the first components of the stringers show up, the longer pieces that will be the backmost section against the wall, they were about the length of a semi-trailer, so they were probably in the vicinity of 40 to 45 feet. And I would imagine that there'll be a little bit of space above those to the very top of the trench.
Yeah, and I'm not going to be able to find those dimensions here off the right now. Yeah.
Space Girl Falcon is asking to remind us again about all the green pipes laying around.
Yeah, these are just water pipes that will be part of the deluge system, essentially. So anytime you see green pipes, they're usually for water.
And yeah, we're expecting majority of that pipe work to run down the length of the trench as well.
Excellent.
Yeah, and one other thing that should probably point out down here, it looks like there is kind of like a gantry, basically something that will span the actual flame trench. Possibly, actually, I don't know if it'll be. I'm seeing these embeds in the front right here, but that would be weird if you're trying to get a vehicle underneath it. But it kind of looks to me that these 4 embeds are for the actual stand itself, and then these ones in the back may be for the actual QD.
If you scroll down, you can see the legs for it. Sorry, Jake.
Yeah,
the two legs are right there that will elevate it up at the height that the QD needs to be at.
Yeah, so that's going to be interesting. I wonder if it's high enough for trucks to drive underneath it. But thinking about that, you may not be able to drive underneath it from this direction, but you should be able to drive underneath it from this direction if any service is needed. Once the work stand is moved over the trench. Cool. Anything else that we should touch on from Massey's?
With my technical difficulties, have you guys looked at the 2 new bucket sections that are up over by the water treatment plant? what used to be the water treatment plant. But we've seen 2 more pieces. Those are the cradles that are going to support the flame diverter on the upper portion.
Yeah, I forgot to mention those. Yeah, so this is the top one. I think this one goes underneath that, right?
Yeah, that's my interpretation.
Right, and so those would essentially go. I don't know if they're right below the opening or up against the top of the opening. I'm assuming it's below it.
Yeah, it'll be below. They'll get welded to the slanted section of those stringers that they're working on over by the LOX tanks. That they've continued a little bit of extra access to. We haven't seen the 3rd and 4th ones fully assembled yet, but just like how the bottom of the bucket is 4 stringers with the cradles in it, those will get surface mounted as opposed to being kind of inset to them. So it'll be a little different.
Yeah, it looks like they almost have everything they need as far as the actual flame bucket goes. Cool. So any more questions on Massey's before we move over to Sanchez?
Well, I've got the obligatory question from everybody, asking a question that none of us know. When is the first static fire at Massey's?
Yeah.
That's,
when they finish.
that's the accurate question. The accurate answer. I mean, construction-wise, it doesn't look like there's super long until they'll be done with it. But then there's the whole paperwork side of things, and we haven't really seen much of that just yet. Though I'd like to think they're partway through that already, because it'd be kind of odd to be this far along in construction of this flame trench and not be working on any of the paperwork stuff.
Agreed.
My cue is clear. We can move on.
Cool. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move over to the Sanchez site. And again, just going to mention that these images were taken very, very early in the morning. So some of them are going to be a little bit dark. I'm going to try and get us some brighter images so we can see things a bit more clearly. I think this one will do for this side of the building. Yeah, so obviously this is the ground fab building. Not a ton happening out here currently. They are definitely still turning out a ton of pipe sections for everything that they have under construction right now, whether that's the everything that's going over to Massey's or all of the new tanks at the launch complex. And I think most of these down here are probably destined for the launch complex. What is that?
Yeah, we're seeing those. Those that look like 3 of those same at Massey's we saw on some of the fan units around the subcoolers seem to have those T-shaped brackets on there. There's 3 fan units at the launch site that must be part of some of the vaporizer systems that I'm suspecting all this pipe works for.
Right, that makes sense.
But yeah, the ground fab really hasn't seen any significant work this particular week. Just that little bit there, and the tent that we keep commenting that one of these days they might actually have a cover on
it. I'm wondering if they're going to end up opening up an entrance right here, because it looks almost like a road going around this back edge, kind of.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying now. It does seem like they might. Obviously, more access is obviously always a good thing to have.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, they may just expand the amount of space they have so they can move some of this stuff over even further. But yeah, sorry, and I'm kind of seeing some of this stuff for the first time today because I spent the morning dealing with some technical issues with OBS not working. One of these days I'll learn my lesson to never update OBS. I always get excited when I see software updates and then end up getting disappointed when you actually install it. So got myself a project for later today. But moving on, we have the 2 booster transport stands, one of which seems to be mostly completed. I don't think there's any reason for them to necessarily move it right now because there's not really anywhere else to store it. So I think this is just waiting for the next time they actually need a booster transport stand, which I think is going to be a while from now. I'm honestly still
Yeah.
surprised that they need this many of them currently.
Yeah, and I mean, they barely even need the one transport stand right now, really.
Yeah.
There's only just those brief moves between the launch site and the build site happening at the moment. So yeah, I guess it doesn't hurt to have, more booster transport stands just ready in advance. Once they've got the time to construct them, they might as well just do them now.
True. Yeah, I mean, the only way I could see them needing two is if they had a booster at the launch site and were preparing to like move another one to the launch site while they're moving the first one back. Like that's the only reason I can see of needing multiple transport stands at this point. But really cool down here, we have some components of the actual engine install stands for the Mega Bay 2. These are for the ship. I think this down here is another cap for the booster for like when they're not using the hot stage ring. I think that's what that is. Is this the same thing?
Yep. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly what it is. And yeah, those the two lift platforms for those work stands being over here is some real big question marks right now on what's going on.
Right. Yeah, I think we have some. I don't know if Ryan's ready to show them, so I haven't actually spoke with him about it. But this morning, or sorry, over the last few days, Lab Padre moved his Rover 1 camera, so you have like a really good view looking straight into Mega Bay 2. And currently, ship 29, ship 30 is ship 30 is sitting on top of the engine install stand right there, which is giving us the ability to kind of see the way that the engine install stands work a little bit more. So I will try and reach out to Ryan right now and see if he's ready to show any of those. If not, we may hold that off for another episode. But yeah, we've learned a lot about the way that those stands actually work, and they're really cool. Definitely a lot different than the booster engine install stands.
Yeah, we had gotten some really good ground photos a couple of weeks ago when they were doing some test lifts with it, and then those access platforms that are attached to it for engine work. And then after the morning after they put the ship up there, they had moved there's a folding bridge section within that for access that I had noticed actually on cam, and then Ryan and I were discussing it, going back and forth, trying to make heads and tails of what that access platform looks like, because we've never seen it from the top view. So there's a lot of guessing and looking at how those front views and interpreting what we're seeing. And he does have a really good graphic on kind of what we suspect it might look like.
Right. Yeah, this is the upper part of the stand, right? So there's two sections of it, the top and bottom.
No, those are actually both bottoms. The one on the left is the bottom of the first stand that they've removed 2 weeks ago. And then the one on the right is the new one for the third stand that never got installed. The access platform that goes on top is actually 3 separate segments that bolt down to this particular platform.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. And they don't have that upper stand out here right now, right?
We've never seen it. The only ones that we've seen are the 3 that are installed on the center section. Even those 3, we never saw them under construction. They probably must have built them inside or had them built off site, and they were brought in, and we never even saw them. So that's why I was saying it's purely speculation on the shapes, because we've never seen them in daylight.
Right. That makes sense.
But yeah, I would imagine there'll be 2 more sets of them somewhere. But again, until they show up on a picture somewhere, we don't know.
Yeah, good point. Let's see what else we have. So these are the walls for that second engine install stand, I think.
It's some of both, actually. There's 8 panels there with the 6 panels for each. So they're not only modifying the ones that were removed, but some of the other ones as well, for some reason.
Okay. Yeah, interesting to see them already modifying them, even though they haven't been used yet.
Yeah, right there we have some interesting things. We kind of noticed there was 12 pallets with some machine next to the grid fin over there. In last week's flyover, we saw 12 pallets that were covered up, and we couldn't see what's in them. They've unwrapped them now, sitting there.
You talking about these?
Yeah, those pieces right there. They're kind of circular with a pin access. We're looking from another angle, but in the shade here, it looks like it's the hinge access between the grid fin and the piece that sticks inside of the booster to go to the actuation motors. Hard to, we haven't necessarily definitively said that, but they seem like that they're grid fin parts, not because we thought at one point that they were part of the skate system for the chopsticks.
I wonder what they're doing out here.
Yeah. Lots of question marks, but something that's really kind of notable.
I'm going to move to another angle really quick. Let's see here. Like I said, I haven't had a chance to go through a lot of these myself, so kind of scanning through these as we're going through them. I think we got some, these are all just tower parts right here, right?
Yeah, that's all, a lot of the mounting. Most of that hardware is for the mounting the first leg, the first column section to the concrete. The embeds for the four leg pieces that are up higher, and then there's four of those right there that are for the angle braces where they meet the concrete.
Right. And speaking of tower sections, I don't think we have much more work that's been completed on these since the last time we looked at them. I have to kind of compare these to the older images, but they look roughly the same as they did last week.
Yeah, I didn't see any changes from last week's flyover. We think right now we're just waiting to see some shivs show up that need to go on top of that mid-level platform before they can put the finish in there.
Right.
Front ones they can probably shimmy in there on their own, but the two that are actually inside of the tower are going to be hard to get in with the roof in place.
Right, that makes sense. Let's see, I'm going to grab another angle over here so we can get to another part of the site. I'm not sure, I don't think there's really much new back here. They're still working on this extension for this building. And then actually, I can't tell if these are, oh yeah, these are still open top tanks. I thought this was a...
Yeah, that hasn't changed at all. Which is obviously a lot less infrastructure over in this area now.
Yeah, so I don't think there's much really to mention back here. But this was the example of that, the cap for the booster, which is interesting because booster 11 does not have one of these on it right now for some reason.
Yeah, I don't. Maybe it's just because they weren't expecting the booster to be out for that long, possibly. That's maybe why they just didn't bother this time. Because we do obviously have a intermittent road closure for tomorrow. And
For
it is
that booster to
expected
move
for,
back.
Yeah.
Yeah, still interesting. I'm like wondering why they put it on this scrapped section instead of putting it actually on top of the booster.
Yeah, I feel like they just didn't expect it to be outside too long. I think that piece is going to be more of a storage in the rocket garden type fixture as opposed to just anytime it's outside. I could see it only being installed for long-term outdoor storage.
That makes sense. Cool. What else do we have going on down here? There's a ton down in this area, but not really too many things new. They are still waiting to scrap the aft section of booster 4. Oh wow, I forgot that there was a second transport stand still down here. I thought this was the last one.
Unfortunately, not. No. Yeah, yeah. If one thing we have noticed, there has been a lot of stuff that needs scrapping that has been sat there for a while for some reason.
Right.
I guess it's just not priority right now.
Tough to see with these images. They're a little bit darker, but just scanning through to make sure we're not missing anything. I'm guessing these water tanks are operational now. It looks like they're either offloading water into these or taking it away. But I don't think we fully know what this is for yet. Because I think the water ended up running across the street, and this may be a water supply for both megabays. But I don't think we ever fully figured that one out yet.
Yeah, I think the little bit of speculation on some of the color coding of the pipes being red and whatnot, it may just be for fire suppression systems within the facility, likely mostly the mega bays.
Yeah, I think that it's connected to this somehow, but I don't know what this is either. Like this could be um like how they would pressurize that water to send it up into the buildings if they needed to. But I'm not
The
100% sure.
the other speculation is, yeah, it could just be a commodities farm for the bays, possibly. Because although he didn't see it being put in, there is likely pipework running from that area all the way over to the other part of the build site. Because you can see pipework coming out of the ground near the pump shed. And it goes into the ground. Yeah, it's pretty much right where that water tanker is.
Mhm.
I don't know if you can see it from this angle,
Try and get another angle.
but there was obviously, there was a bit of a period where we weren't able to get flyovers in for for quite a while, so there could have been a lot going on within that time.
Yeah, this is interesting. I'm gonna have to go through older images to try and piece this together. I mean, it would be interesting to have because they used to have argon storage outside of each of the tents and outside of both of the high bay and the mega bay, and those are used for welding. This could be like a centralized argon storage potentially, and then vaporizers so that they can send that argon as gas over to where it's needed. But that's all speculation at this point, I would say. Anything else in Sanchez that we need to touch on before I move over to that new parking lot?
I think you've covered pretty much everything there.
Cool.
I'd like to thank William Foss for a gifted membership. I do have a question regarding the tower segments over there from Airrock. With the addition of the hot staging ring, will the connection point for the ship quick disconnect arm be located higher on the new towers? And is the work on segments 4 and 5 related?
Well, that with the current tower in Starbase, that is actually already taken into account for the hot staging ring. There is quite a stretch between the actual arm and the QD on the ship. So yeah, they might put the arms higher up in the future towers. Although actually, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they do, to be honest, just to make it easier.
Yeah, I do think it's a possibility. I don't think we've seen any evidence yet. Tower sections 4 and 5 have been seen to be disassembled. However, they've been reassembled since with the staircases and access built into them. I think that was the reason they took it apart, to put things in. However, the actual attachment points for the quick disconnect arm have not had any visible changes yet. So if they're going to move it, we haven't seen any evidence of it yet.
Right. IQ was clear.
Cool. And yeah, I did notice that SpaceX released another update, a Starship update, but I don't know how long that is. So I'm guessing it's probably not best for us to show it during this stream.
It's about 45 minutes.
Yeah, it's a bit of a long one.
I guess let's not do that. I guess, yeah, I'll have to watch that myself after the stream is over. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and move over to the ring yard, or what used to be the ring yard, where we can now see a little bit more progress on the foundation for the parking garage, but it's really not changed a ton from last week. Looks like they're laying rebar for the central support columns right here, and then they're starting to frame out the supports or the base for the corners.
Yeah, the one side they finished up the corners, and the one side actually, the longer side there, looks like it's all got most of the intermediate column supports in there. But yeah, just continued work on getting ready for the above ground construction to happen here soon.
Yeah, this is something that I feel like should have been installed a very, very long time ago. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with all the street side parking once this is done. but I imagine they'll probably want to get back to having like a shoulder pull-off area, which they don't have currently.
Yeah, I can see them saving some of that spot. I think once the Star Factory is fully built and fully manufacturing, I think we're going to see a further influx of vehicles. So it may just be that the new vehicles have somewhere to actually go.
Right. So moving over to the bays, we can see that they're still making some progress on this road that goes around the backside. I think they have, let me see if I can get an image showing the backside really quick. This is a good one. Still waiting to fill in the area behind this retaining wall, but they do have at least a one-lane road going back behind it. What is that? Looks like some bunch of underground conduit, possibly.
Yeah, I'd say that's what.
So from here over to this area. Yeah, I can't tell if it's electrical or if it's right. So on the outside of the building, it looks like all of the scaffolding is still coming down on the first mega bay. I think they removed even more of it over this last week, so this is like all that's really left over here. Which is funny because this building, at least from the outside, almost looks like it's more complete than the first one. And they still. Sorry, go ahead.
I said if we're lucky, we might see the last bit of scaffolding removed from Mega Bay 1 by the end of the year, if we're lucky.
Yeah, it's interesting how long it's taken him. It seems like it's just like a low priority thing right now, but making progress on it either way. On the front side over here, looking into the bay, I think they've poured. So they originally, I think, cut out some of the concrete that was over in this corner, and it looks to me like they've re-poured it. Right, and this is where the engine install stand that they removed was sitting, right? Right. Looks like they've fully finished the elevator column or the elevator core, whatever you want to call it. And as far as we know, I don't think they've installed those elevators still, so we're still waiting on that. It'll be tough to tell when they're actually working. I think we'll see this one come down once they actually finish those. Let's see, what else do we want to talk about at the ring yard? Yeah, so we'll finally have that full stack of Booster 14 maybe in the next week or two. Which
there was one interesting thing we did actually notice last night. There was the raceway jig moved over to Mega Bay 1, so it looks like they're getting ready to put possibly the raceway section, the top half of the raceway section on the methane tank of B14. So then I guess, yeah, the next thing after that should be full stack, and hopefully that should, like I said, it should be within the next week or so.
Hey guys, I got people in chat saying they can only hear Zach, not BJ or Jake.
let's see. I don't know if they can actually hear Joe either. So it may be me just talking by myself here. Let's see in the chat. Can you guys hear Astro Joe?
Testing, testing, Astro Joe.
Let's see.
And this is Jake speaking. Can you all hear me loud and clear?
Looks like they can hear BJ. No, Jake?
All right, we're good.
Okay, cool. Well, sorry about that, y'all. Yeah, that would be funny if I was just sitting here answering my own questions. So I guess maybe Jake will repeat the last thing you just said. You were mentioning that the raceway jig for installing the all the raceway sections for Booster 14 have been was brought to the Mega Bay over this past week.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So once they've done that, then they should be pretty much ready to go for the full stack then. So yeah, I can't imagine it'll be too long until that happens.
Awesome. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, they did bring in, they removed Ship 30 from the high bay, and that's now sitting inside of Mega Bay 2. I don't think we have any angles that really can see the ship. Actually, right. And once they moved that out, they moved 29 back in, and I'm trying to grab an angle where I can maybe see 29.
Yeah, that's that's the big thing we saw. I think it was yesterday or day before. When they moved 29 out, we did notice that there was a lot of tiles removed from it. And I'd say that's pretty much down to all the new data they got from IFT3. Because before, obviously, they didn't really have much to actually go off to be able to create a really strong heat shield. But now they got the data, we should see quite a change with the ships from now on, I say.
Yeah, so they did remove a lot of the tiles, or all of the tiles from the top of the nose cone. It looks like at least half of them are reinstalled here. It's tough to see from this angle, but I think they're reinstalled up to this line right here.
Yeah, it looks like they're about 4 tiles worth that they've put back in there, being that there's 2 rows. There's 2 rows that interlock to make a flat line, and then the next 2. So there looks like there's just a little bit of the tip to go.
And sorry, Mauricio is sending some stuff in the background. I'm not sure. I don't know if I should show them or not, given that we haven't been able to see the actual presentation yet. But I guess maybe we might as well. Let's go ahead and bring these up.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty hard one to avoid. So yeah, we'll definitely talk about it, unless the performance upgrades and the design changes to expect.
Yeah, this is pretty crazy. So right now you can see the difference between right here is Starship 1 and basically the next version of Starship. And this is basically, I guess we have some different forward flaps on here. And it's also, as y'all can see, a little bit more stretched just by a few meters. Whoa.
Yeah, the hot stage ring is very different.
Yeah, and that's not just it's not just a hot stage ring going on there. There's actually a slight booster stretch as well.
Yeah, the grid fins are lower, it appears. And what else do we have? For some reason, they don't show the common dome weld, but what they do show...
yeah, the other big one there.
Engine shroud.
Yeah, and Elon talked about that a while ago. And it seems maybe that really is going ahead.
I hate that.
You're not the only one. I'm not a fan of it either.
Yeah, I really like how clean it looks with the engine shroud on it, but that's going to be interesting. Yeah, I mean, so we have no engine shroud, and it's definitely stretched. They have a new hot stage design, which is a lot more similar to, I guess, pretty much every other vehicle that has a hot stage. You know, this looks similar to, I guess, the N1, in my opinion. And I guess just from looking at it, it seems like this would be integrated into the vehicle itself instead of being a separate piece.
I was going to say that hostage ring design there. I think that's Elon channeling his inner N1 fandom again.
Yeah, I don't know. I wonder. This is gonna be interesting because without having that be a separate piece, it almost seems like all of the hardware for the hot state for the grid fins would be almost inside the tank. Like if this is the top of, it almost looks like this is the top of the tank right here instead of, or maybe a heat shield over the top of the tank, which would be weird unless all of this is a void space down here, but it doesn't look like it's a separate piece. So that's very interesting. I'm sure he probably talked about this in the actual presentation, but yeah, I'm kind of just guessing right now based off of what we're seeing. But even more interesting.
Well, yeah, there's actually another change with the grid fins there. They're not just lower down. Look at the space in between them. They're now 90 degrees apart by the looks of it.
That almost looks like there's only 3 of them.
Oh, I hope not.
Well, he did talk about wanting to only have 3 at one point, so that would make sense.
Yeah, this is going to be very interesting. So I guess let's bring up the next one, which is scary. So this is showing Starship 3, which is insane. Yeah, this is definitely going to require some changes, in my opinion, specifically with the QD arm. I think this is going to rekindle a lot of people asking whether or not the tower needs to be taller, but in my opinion, I don't think it will be. But what we do have is a even more further stretched booster, and a significantly taller ship. I mean, the ship is almost as tall as the version 1 booster, which is pretty insane. But let's look at some stats here. So it looks like they've added, in between these two, Starship 2 and 1, it looks like they've added about 350 tons of propellant, and then 750 tons of propellant for the booster in the version 3. And then right now they don't have a payload listed for version 1, but we go from 100 tons up to 200 tons between those two versions. Wow. The ship propellant is even more drastic, I think, than the booster. So it's an additional 1,100 tons of propellant for the ship, which is pretty incredible.
Well, that takes into consideration because the RVACs go from 3 to 6 between 2 to 3.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the other thing as well. All this extra prop that I guess it's probably safe to say that we're going to see even more tank farm changes in the future to try and load all this extra prop in tank farms for the other pads.
Yeah, I mean, this definitely makes the having extra storage at the tank farm super necessary, like compared to what they originally had. So it kind of makes sense why they've expanded, at least what it looks like currently, that they have more storage capability than they did with the original design. But this is so I guess right now the ship in version 3 will be 69 meters tall, which is about the height of the booster without the current booster without the hot stage ring. So that is insane. It's going to be I don't know, that's impressive. I almost think that the changes to the ship are just almost hard to believe. You know what I mean? That's pretty crazy. So the total height will go from 121 meters up to 150 meters. That's going to be pretty impressive.
I mean, yeah, there was all these changes talked about Elon in the past, and I guess they're actually coming true. I don't really know what to say about it, to be honest. It's kind of crazy seeing all this actually happening.
Yeah, I agree. There's a ton left, other screenshots and whatnot from this. I'm gonna avoid showing those because I kind of want to actually be able to watch it myself before just showing all these diagrams and kind of not really knowing what to think of them without actually hearing the explanation that goes along with them. But yeah, this is pretty awesome either way. Cool. I'm gonna go back to the flyover images for now. And where did we leave off? So we were talking about just the ship 29 moving, or sorry, ship 30 moving over to the Mega Bay, and ship 29 getting its tiles replaced, and so the nose cone tiles, and then a bunch of them along the backside of it as well too. Let's go and move on to the Star Factory, unless there's anything else to talk about at the ring yard.
Yeah, and other than noting that ship 31 was moved off of the turntable and back into the corner where 30 used to be. But yeah, that's the only other change that happened there amongst those buildings.
Before we leave here, I do have a question from Cosmic. Do they have a engine installation stand for boosters like for ships?
Yeah, they got 3 of them at the back of Mega Bay 1. I don't.
Yeah, you
we might
can't
have a
see
bit
them
of
from
a
these angles, but they're
angle.
in the back. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to thank Jim Cabot for a gifted membership, but that's it.
Yeah, before, see, we're about to move on to Star Factory. We do actually have a screenshot of inside a Star Factory that may be worth showing right now, I think.
Okay.
Because I know a lot of us have been wondering what it looks like in there.
Yeah, so this is a cool shot showing the inside of the Star Factory. I'm guessing this is this looks like the pre-existing section of the Star Factory. It's tough to tell. Because what I'm looking for in the back corner is the press pit area, which it doesn't appear back here. So I'm guessing this is this actually, in my opinion, looks like the Star Factory before the expansion. This doesn't look like a recent picture, in my opinion.
Yeah, that structure with the handrails in the back corner was the utility room that was in the back corner of the original Phase 1.
Yeah, so do you think this is an older image?
I'm not sure if it's an older image, but it's definitely from the original section. I mean, we see a lot of booster parts.
Yeah, what I'm thinking in the back right here is that there is a wall back here, which I'm pretty sure would have to have been torn down at this point. So that's what makes me think this is an older image. But still cool either way, and you can see how much floor space there is back here. This is pretty amazing. I wish they would. I wonder if they have other images of it, but again, probably have to wait until after the show to be able to go through some of those.
Yeah, the one other screenshot that we have in the back channel has the Z-Stack stair units that arrived long into production, so that there is some newer production pictures in there. But yeah, this one may be old.
I'm guessing you're talking about this one?
Next thing. Yeah, that stair system that's to the left of that aft section was brought in only a couple of months ago.
Yeah, it's tough to tell which booster this is. I wonder if Jax could just look at this and tell which one it is.
Probably. I wouldn't be surprised if you could do that.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I'm excited to check that out after the show is over. This is a big distraction for me because I'm like almost wanting to like end the show and go watch it, but we're not gonna do that. So I guess we'll go ahead and talk about the Star Factory. Sorry for that back and forth there with the image swaps. Like I said at the beginning of the show, having some technical issues and not able to use OBS like I normally do, so I'm just like swiping through images like I typically do in the background, which you guys normally don't get to see. So yeah, we'll go ahead and talk about the Star Factory. One of the cool things that I was noticing this week, which I'm sure people may have noticed before, is some of the what looks like an outline for glass on the front side of the building, and I don't know if I have an image that's going to show that. Let me. Yeah, I may have to go to a Sanchez site view to see that.
Yeah, the over these last few weeks, that's definitely we can see the complete outline of where the glass is going to go. Some interesting parts along the bay, the side, the angled wall on the bay side that I would have liked to have seen a slightly different geometry, but lots of glass, especially in that corner. So hopefully we'll be able to get to see some really good segment pieces as they come out of the building.
I don't think I have any front side images to show it, because you can't really see it down here very well.
Yeah, the front, you can kind of see the sun shining off the front surface pretty well, but yeah, the to show the angle off of that wall, we don't get a really good view here.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, it basically comes down at an angle from this top corner down to over here, and so it almost looks like similar to the Starlink building, that it'll be like a triangular like glass surface in the front.
Well, except for it
you
goes
can see this one.
flat. Yeah, the front you can see it there. It actually goes flat on both sides of the corner, but it stays flat for a shorter distance around the back corner, around the back side.
Right. I didn't realize they had it on this side right here. So down here you can see the glass, and then it looks like it's going to come up towards the front down there.
Yeah, so we'll have glass clear, some white cladding at the very bottom up to the glass level, and then a strip of glass with that whole corner filled in, and then the solid cladding everywhere else.
Well, that's exciting news. Glad that we I didn't notice that in the previous weeks. I'm guessing they just installed that diagonal brace recently. So yeah, and you can, I guess, see it even better from this angle. The white paneling on the bottom.
Yeah, when you know what you're looking for, it goes there. Yeah, and they've been welding all the glass mounting brackets to all those beams over the last couple of weeks. So hopefully we'll start seeing the glass go into the corner here soon.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
whilst
the window is quite different from the render we saw in the past, it's still nice to see that there is actually still going to be glass on this side of the factory.
Yeah, might actually be able to see on the inside just a little bit when the lights are all on.
Or they put curtains down in front of all the windows.
Yeah, that would be savage. So let's see, what else do we have? They are making more progress on the actual roof itself. So I think this section is now mostly complete. And there, as far as framework goes, not a ton left to do. They're still expanding down the front side right here, which you can see that they've got the foundations for the columns, which will basically come down all the way over to here. But they are moving along super fast with this. Yeah,
there's still a little bit of, there's some additional footings right next to the phase one that are far closer to the mud flats side of it. We're still kind of waiting to see exactly where the final exterior wall is going to be, because it's unclear how close to Mega Bay 2 they're going to get with that building.
Right. I'm curious how they're going to get the HVAC units up here, because all the other ones they were able to put a crane close to the edge and lift over, but all the ones in the center are going to be kind of difficult to reach.
Yeah, I'll be curious if we end up seeing a GMK come in to put some of those mid ones in before they actually go too much farther over, or they're going to have some other way. I mean, they did have a very long luffing jib on the cranes that have done a lot of the mid ones so far, but it's getting secluded right now.
Guess you can bring in a helicopter or something if you really need to.
That'll be quite a sight to see.
Yeah, it's impressive. They did that at the Costco that is right next to my house. That they brought them in by helicopter.
Probably cheaper and easier to do it that way at this point. Yeah, this is really exciting. I'm really excited to see the outcome of this. there's still some features of it that we don't fully understand. I think right here, this does now appear to be outlined to be like a full large sliding door. So I wonder if this is going to, as I initially was kind of thinking, the main exit for sections that are coming out of here, because I see a smaller door right here. I'm assuming there'll be one over here as well too. But this is a tall one, so this almost looks like where the nose cones will probably exit from.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think ships may even come out of there in two pieces, bottom half and top half, of the size of that door.
Yeah, what's very interesting about all of this is with the extension of the ships, I would say that further solidifies the fact in my mind that the high bay is going to have to go, because I don't think like it was barely tall enough for boosters, but I wonder if it's going to be. I wonder if they'll be able to use the ship lifting jig with this building. I have a feeling they won't be able to. Maybe I'm pretty sure they'll probably at least be able to fit the ships in here, obviously with it only being 69 meters tall. But I wonder if they'll even be able to use the cranes anymore inside of there.
I mean, yeah, it's still being used quite a bit right now, but yeah, I think as soon as these vehicle stretches come along, it's pretty much just gonna nullify that bay.
Let's see, what else do we have here? So they are making some good progress with the office building down here. Looks like they're starting to lay down the corrugated panels, which will later have concrete on top of them. And making some good progress with the framework as well too. Let me see if I can grab a different angle further out.
Yeah, not a whole lot there, just a lot of construction going on there. One of the things that we've noted that's kind of interesting is that on that left wing there's a couple of triangular voids in a lot of the floors. So we're thinking that there may be some kind of atrium that is open across multiple floors.
Where are you seeing that?
Just left if you you got the center section and then the wing off of it. Right in the middle of that wing, you can kind of make it out. There's a triangle. You can see where right there. Essentially, there's a triangle void there, and on the up the top side of that cross beam as well. Some interesting architecture.
Yeah, that's interesting. It almost reminds me of the one in California where they every time you're seeing them do commentary, you can see all of the employees down on the other level. Like it looks similar to that. Okay.
And we've got some sections outside of the factory as well that we can quickly touch on. So those two ring sections you see there, they are actually ship payload bay pathfinders. So basically what I mean by pathfinders is they would have been used to commission the tooling in factory or the new tooling, and just pathfind the design changes as well, because what we've seen with these barrels is when I say the payload bays, I mean they're for Starlinks. So one of the big things we've seen is the payload bay door is now actually about half a ring lower. So that could potentially mean that they could fit, I don't know, maybe another 2 levels of Starlink sats in the V2 ships. The other thing we noticed as well is the payload bay hatch door is now on the payload bay sleeve, whereas before it used to be on the forward dome sleeve. So that's moved up slightly. And then another little change we've seen with these is there's 2 little oval cutouts just underneath the payload bay door. And speaking with Jax the other day, he thinks that they're probably extra roll thruster outlets. The interesting thing is they're only 3 rings high, whereas the payload bay barrels for the V1 ships, they were 5 rings high. So yeah, it remains to be seen if we're going to see a shorter payload bay, or if these payload bays are going to be made up of two lots of rings.
That makes sense. Cool. Anything else we want to touch on from down in this area? No. So
Nothing major. There is a dome section sitting outside as well. That's appeared in the last few days. It does have a hole cut in the side of it, so it's possibly header tank pipework related for a ship, maybe. And then the other thing, yeah. So that'll be what you call the dome knuckle, or the dome base, basically. And then
like
to the right,
forward dome.
I don't, not 100% sure what dome that would actually be, but again, that's probably another Pathfinder. I should imagine we're going to see a load more other sections coming out soon where they've finished commissioning various tooling within the factory.
Right. Yeah, I would imagine at some point they may want to go with a flat dome for the forward dome on the ship. That way you can just increase the amount of, you can actually lower that payload bay door even further.
Yeah.
So that could be part of how they're accomplishing that.
Because yeah, that's the one thing we haven't actually seen yet, is that the new elliptical dome design being used in any of the ships. So hopefully that's something that does come with the V2 ships.
Right. Awesome. Well, I guess let's move on to the village for a little bit. Some of these images are super dark, so they're tough to see. But I don't think there's a ton of changes down here. We do have a really large parking lot that is down here now, which we were wondering if this would end up being housing, but it looks like it's all parking right now. But not really much to touch on in the village other than they are continuing on all of this housing construction, and really tough to see at this time of day, but it's looking very good right now. And down here, I don't think we have anything else to touch on either as far as anything spotted down in this near the
nothing
integration building.
Nothing major going on there at the moment, really. Just everyday activities with the mainly SPMT activities.
Right. I would hate to live on the backside over here because I imagine the mosquitoes are way worse in this area than anywhere else.
True, although I suppose you're a bit more secluded over there as well, a bit more further away from all the construction, so that'd be the good thing about that area.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I guess I'll go ahead and move us over to the launch site unless we have some questions and donations that we haven't touched on, Astro Joe.
Yeah, sure. I definitely want to thank DeMars for gifting 10 memberships and welcome all new members. Enjoy the perks. Mule Skinner Films with a $9.99 super chat. You guys are doing great as always. Thank you, Mule Skinner. Appreciate that. A couple of questions regarding the stretched ships and boosters. Des Nichols asking, could they remove the roof of the high bay and raise the height for the new ship height?
No.
It's not really something SpaceX do, so I say that's probably going to be unlikely.
And on the same related note, Todd Harris asking, I kind of think they'll keep the original high bay for payload integration. Your thoughts?
Sorry, Joe, could you repeat that again quickly?
I kind of think they'll keep the original high bay for payload integration. Your thoughts?
Well, with the ships due to get as tall as they are, I think that's probably a no to that one.
Yeah, I mean, I would think at that point, no, we wouldn't need cranes. Everything would be on stand. So there's a possibility, but some of the confinements of that space, I think that it's destined to be replaced with something more suitable for what it needs to be.
Yeah, plus with an actual payload integration building, they'd be wanting to integrate payloads into multiple ships at the same time, probably. and you just can't really do that in high bay. It's just not enough of a footprint there.
Right. So yeah, lots of questions regarding that Starship update, and a lot of suggestions wondering if we are going to have a watch party and a deep dive in the green room after the show.
Sure. Yeah. Might as
Yeah.
well.
Sounds like a plan. Let's get on over to the launch site.
All right. Well, we are now at the suborbital site where we're basically not having too much go on other than the ground prep that they're doing for the new launch pad. So basically, they're still installing all of the wick drains down here on this edge of the this little sliver that they have. And they've already finished all of it on this section over here, and they've covered it with dirt. And so I think it almost looks like they're finished down here. They haven't gone all the way down to the end yet, but I don't see.
Yeah, they're definitely finished. You can actually see both of the machines are being disassembled right now. One the blue one has the top half of it taken off. The other one's actually off the arm of the excavator already. Some of us are expecting that end there is just so narrow that they may wait to do that until they get the approvals from the Army Corps to fill in that strip in the middle.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm excited for the next phase of this. I think it's possible that we won't really see much until they're finished with the static fire or the flame trench, basically at Massey's, and then once that gets done, I think we'll start to see like a ton of action down here. But I don't see any actual changes to the tank farm yet, so they're still have all of that stuff in place and active. Obviously, we saw a static fire of ship 29, not this week, but last week, and then the booster static fire this week, which we'll show again here in a few minutes. But yeah, I don't think there's really much else to really touch on at the suborbital side.
And yeah, for anyone that might be wondering about the strip of wetland between the two areas that SpaceX already built on, obviously the comment period for that has ended, and we're now just waiting for an update of what's to come next.
So we'll move on to the orbital tank farm, and I think as of last night, we finally saw some of the new tanks venting. I think it was this tank right here, which is one of the new nitrogen tanks. I'm gonna try and grab another angle of this. Yeah, so the venting looked like it was coming from the backside, from what I was able to see when I briefly looked at it before we started the show.
It would have been coming from the front. There's
That was
on
the
the
front
front
side.
yeah, there's a lot of T outlet pipes coming off each tank. You might be able to see it from here. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
so
You can see the three white ones there. There are some vents sticking up on the other sides of the tanks as well. So it is possible to have been there, but it could be just as likely the front.
Sorry about that. Dog's sitting here barking in the background. But yeah, so it looks like they're getting close to activating some of these tanks. And we still haven't seen, these ones are making some progress. I think, oh, okay. So this is the fourth nitrogen tank, which, if I remember correctly, last week they didn't have this one connected. So that fourth nitrogen tank looks like it's now plumbed in with the rest of them. And now, I mean, I'm sure there's still work left to do on that, but they appear to be starting on the 5 liquid oxygen tanks now. Beyond that, they have, as of this morning, I think, started installing some of these vaporizers down here. So there's 6 of them, or sorry, 8 of them. I can't tell if these are double.
There's 6. The two on the ends of there are bigger ones. I think those are the ones being installed there. There's a third one around by the other side of the tanks. Those
Right.
are probably the 3 that you're about to talk about going on that pad.
Yeah, and then there's more. There's 4 more of them at the Sanchez site, which not sure if they're meant for down here, but we are expecting a lot of them over here. So I think these new ones, the ones they're installing this today, are down here.
Yeah, the right now 2 out of the 3 are standing up, and the third one's just looks like they may be grabbing it right now with the crane.
Okay. Yeah, so tons of progress on that. Elsewhere in the tank farm, I don't think we've seen too much action. These water tanks are really the only other thing that they're working on back here. And we don't really fully know what a lot of the stuff is yet. So I think I'm personally need to wait until I see some clear images or wait for them to actually finish everything so we can trace out the pipework and figure out exactly what's going on back here. But yeah, making a ton of progress, and it's going to be interesting to see what changes they complete before the next launch. If anything, I would say it may be possible that we'll see them abandon the 2 nitrogen tanks and possibly this water tank, depending on whether or not they get all of these vaporizers installed first. On the front side, not really much to talk about either. And as I said, I'm kind of just going through this for my first time. Yeah, I don't see. So this is one of the other nitrogen pipe, liquid nitrogen that comes from those tanks, and it hasn't yet made its way across down here. But when it does, it'll essentially be replacing this one right here. So this is the pipe that they use to switch over from. Oh wait, hold on. Is that the D tank line? Yeah. That may actually be the D tank line. I'm not sure. But yeah, so they're going to have to basically bring that line down here so that they can bring nitrogen over to the system, and basically replace these 2 tanks that are over here. So still tons of work to do on that, and it's going to be interesting to see how much of it they try and complete before this next launch. But yeah, it's pretty amazing that they're doing all of this at the same time while still continuing flight testing operations. And yeah, I think they're moving pretty quickly with it. Anything else from the orbital tank farm you all want to mention?
I'd say you covered pretty much everything there. Yeah.
Cool. Well, next we have the orbital pad, which, as y'all know, there was a static fire test yesterday, and I think I'll go ahead and show that footage from Mauricio one more time. So we have 3 different angles, and I have the volume turned off for these, but so I'm even noticing debris flying in this one too. There's some that actually kind of looks like a tarp, possibly.
Yeah, some of us think that that's one of the erosion control fences that was right in front of the LOX blast barriers.
Yeah, and one thing we did notice as well, they didn't seem to get around to actually cleaning the pad up as much this time before this started fire, so maybe there was debris on the pad as well, like got blown out during the starting fire test.
Where was that barrier you're mentioning?
At the bottom, right at the very bottom, where that new blast barrier, where the LOX vent is, the nitrogen dump. They're working right there. You can see the outline just below your cursor there, but there's a whole black erosion control right there. Judging by where the exhaust comes from the tower and it being roughly above the electrical bunker, I think it ripped all that out of the ground.
Right. Really quickly, actually, I want to check something that I just noticed. I saw some scaffolding back here, and it looked like they were removing some of this pipe work. Yeah, they have a bunch of scaffolding set up back here, or at least possible framework for it. So I wonder if they'll be removing all of this extra pipe work that was for those the cryo testing stations. I have to keep an eye on that over the coming weeks. But let's go ahead and show the other 2 angles. It's crazy watching this, watching the plume hit this wall right here.
Does seem to do a good job of keeping most of the plume itself off of the electrical bunker. Obviously, the pressure waves are probably still blasting it.
Yeah, I mean, it does go over it pretty well. It does seem like the plume goes up into those vents for the liquid oxygen over here, or nitrogen vents from the LOX kettle boilers. It looks like it just goes like straight up into those vents. That can't be good. Cool. And we'll show right now the third angle, which was one we were going to talk about here in a minute. And as I mentioned, you can see tons of debris. Well, not tons, just like 3 different larger pieces that are flying out from underneath there. Yeah, what we wanted to try and do was see if we can see anything that's just laying around that might contribute to that. So let's go ahead and see if we can find anything. All of that stuff was basically shooting out from this direction right here. And I don't know. I don't see anything large that would fly out of this area.
Yeah, it seems like the last minute clearing of the pad before the static fire really led them to not be able to get the sweepers out there and clean off, because pretty much every ground camera I've seen from multiple places, just the amount of small particulate stuff that got blown around was pretty crazy.
I mean, the pad was certainly clean after the static fire test, after it got
Right.
blown off the pad.
And yeah, I mean, this photo was taken just a few hours before that test. So, I mean, the only thing that's really out here for the most part is just vehicles. I mean, I could see this stand flying. I don't know if that's bolted to the ground, but it's on the back side of the tower, so I'm not sure how likely that would be. I guess we may have to wait till next week so we can actually see the area around here and see if there's like new concrete somewhere, if potentially that was a chunk of concrete flying out. But I would like to believe it wasn't, just with the way that they've constructed this. I would be really surprised to see a chunk of concrete flying out from this area. But either way, this is the first engine test that we've seen of Booster 11. So it's been less than a month since the third flight test, which really just kind of mind-blowing or actually kind of to be expected, how they've picked up the pace between each launch and each test. Things are going really well. As y'all can see, they do not have a hot stage ring yet for Booster 11. At least we haven't seen it installed. So that's going to be interesting. I would assume that it'll be the same as the previous version, that we won't see a new hot stage ring until they start rolling out the newer boosters. So yeah, and you know, that's going to be one of the big things to look out for. Also, they as I mentioned before, they have the new caps to put on top of the inner stage when they don't have a hot stage ring on top of it, but we don't currently see that on this booster. Yeah, with this being the first engine test, it went pretty well. I don't think they confirmed whether it was all 33 engines, but can only assume that it probably was, because they don't really have a reason to test anything less than the full set of 33 engines. So everything seemed to have gone pretty well for the most part. And you know, I noticed they didn't repaint the legs before they did that for the first time.
Yeah, they don't really seem to be bothering to keep painting these things now. I think they've realised that it's probably a bit of a waste of time, actually. Because obviously you got the cladding on the bottom of the tower that wasn't repainted before the last launch either.
Yeah, and sorry, I was just glancing through the chat right here. I don't look at it too often, but I wanted to just make sure I wasn't missing anything in here. Yeah, we usually, I at least me personally, I don't look at the chat too much because it gets really distracting, and then you'll often hear me ask to repeat questions if I end up looking at the chat. So that is why I usually don't glance at it too often and rely on that question bot. So on that note, Astro Joe, do we have any questions about the launch site? We don't have a ton of updates out here currently.
Yeah, for sure. But I want to thank Dave Avery for gifting 5 memberships, as well as Jim Caffett gifting another. And Smurf Trooper came in with another gifted membership as well. Thank you for that. Nate One Sam, $5 super chat. Zach, you mentioned once how many watts the cryo pump motors are. Do you remember how large they are? Trying to calculate GSE power consumption.
I would recommend maybe going back to the episode where I talked about that. It's I try not to like memorize stats on everything. I try to get numbers for pretty much everything out here, and people ask me what the capacity of these tanks are and how many nitrogen tanks are, and I can rarely remember all that stuff off the top of my head. Usually I have to refer back to my own scripts. So yeah, I would recommend checking out that episode because I can't remember it off the top of my head.
For sure. I think we covered this last week or the week before, but Dig Dug is bringing it up again. Since the BQD is getting roasted during the tower avoidance maneuver, do we think perhaps they will move the BQD to the other side of the launch mount to avoid the roasting in the future?
I've seen people say that multiple times, like recommend moving it to the other side. I don't really see how that would work. I mean, you would basically have the front side of the booster facing this way, and you can't turn the ship around because, your GSE for the ship is on this side. So I don't imagine them doing that. I mean, as long as the front side of the booster needs to coincide with the front side of the ship, I just don't see them doing that. If anything, I could imagine maybe an upgraded hood potentially at some point, or just completely redesigning the way this works. They do have a replacement door for this, so I think that maybe it has like a lifespan, like after, I don't know, 5 to 10 launches or something like that, they would replace the actual door, just the same way that they replaced the top panels on the top of the launch mount once those are eroded past a certain point. But I think more than that, like those are items that don't seem to need to be replaced every launch. I think the more concerning is the actual flex hoses, like whatever is going on with those that causes them to have to be replaced every launch, I think is a bigger concern, not necessarily the actual housing of the QD itself.
Agreed. And that addressed Crane Man's most recent question. Ulrich Mueller asks, what does the Army have to do with the small land strip?
It's not the Army, but it's the Army Corps of Engineers. They are usually responsible for anything involving wetland area. Actually, their job is way bigger than that. But SpaceX has to abide by their regulations, and in particular, what they're concerned about here is actually, I'm going to go to a different image that shows the full site. So all of this out here is wetland area, and this little sliver in here is also considered part of that. And so in the event of, I don't know if they call it like a 100-year storm, this basin essentially has a certain amount of like capacity. I'm going to move out here. So there's a certain amount of water capacity that can be stored in this area, and if you make any alterations to this land, like if you add dirt in here to build up that land, then you have to subtract somewhere else in order to maintain the total volume of potential water storage in this area. So they cannot build into this without getting Army Corps of Engineer approval, because when they do, they have to subtract away that same amount of material that they add somewhere else. So you would think it'd just be as simple as, oh, well, I know I need to do this, so I'm just going to take it away from somewhere else. But you actually have to get approval in order to do that.
That sums it up perfectly. William Foss is asking, wasn't the horizontal tank farm supposed to be plumbed in by IFT4?
There was no way to really just completely convert all of this over, because they have to remove certain things at the same time that they're adding certain things, and in order to like maintain operations, you have to do it in phases, and I don't think they ever really gave a date when they expect it to be complete. They just, I guess that's probably as simple as it is. They never really gave us a date. That's kind of an assumption that it would be done by a certain time, but it has to be done in phases in order to prevent interrupting testing operations. So I would think that we would maybe see a full conversion by the 5th flight at least, maybe even the 6th, because at some point still going to have to remove the rest of these tanks, and especially on the liquid oxygen side, they'll have to get rid of all of the pipe work that connects the LOX pumps over to the pumps over here, and switch that over to these tanks right here. So it's a step-by-step process, and it's definitely not going to be done before Flight 4.
Agreed. Along the same lines, Crane Man asking, do you expect another wall between the tanks or retaining walls?
Well, the
Where?
methane, I think, yeah, he's probably talking about methane tanks. Well, the existing methane tanks, they've got everything they already need, so there shouldn't need to be any more walls built around any part of that tank farm now, if that's what he's referring to.
I do believe so. Trentalico asking, do you expect a water-cooled BQD at some point for rapid turnaround?
I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
imagine why you would. I don't think the BQD itself is the problem. It's something to do with the hoses, and we don't fully understand whatever is causing damage to those hoses.
And I think the other issue at the moment is there's the current BQD hood design. It's not fully sealed during each launch. I think there's still hot gases getting inside of it. I think once they come up with a design that is actually fully sealed, then it shouldn't really be much of an issue anymore. So yeah, I don't think they're going to need to do anything like a water cooled BQD at all.
Yeah.
All right. Andy Alder asking, do we know how many engines fired yesterday?
We have no actual confirmation of how many engines fired, but I guess from what we could see, SpaceX seemed to be satisfied. So I guess all 33 probably fired yesterday. But like I said, that's total guess.
All right. Archangel DJ with a more of a statement, but tell Zach he can use the SpaceX static fire video to check for missing concrete. It's on X. And you tell us your timing on when you want to do that watch party there, Zach, if we're going to dive right into it after the show, or you want to take a break and come back to it later.
I probably won't host it myself because I do have a few other things to do after the show, but I'm sure somebody will be streaming that after the show on Discord.
Sounds good. And then, of course, the obligatory win hop, Rovshin Nazarov, guest for the 4th flight, May the 4th.
I mean, well, my guess is probably going to be mid-May. But I think the last thing we heard from SpaceX themselves, or rather Gwyn Shotwell, is they were aiming, I think, towards the start of May. I don't know if that's still the case, if that's changed or not, but that's the last official thing that we did here.
All right, my cue is clear. I think we should wrap it up.
Cool. Well, I guess I did see one other question about covering the OLM with ship tiles, and I don't know. I feel like I've answered that question a lot, but
yeah, I wasn't going to ask.
Tiles are not meant for that.
I wasn't going to ask
meant
it
for heat, not for dynamic forces of like abrasive forces from engines and the pressure that's involved with that.
For sure. And then CB's just come in with the last one. The launch table at Kennedy Space Center, will it come to Boca for Tower 2?
That's a good question. We don't really know the answer to that. I guess with the fact that they've torn down the legs for the other launch mount, I would say it's a toss-up because we don't really know what's going to happen right now. Like, we don't know if they're redoing that launch table. So it's definitely a possibility that that whole launch table may be scrapped, although I personally find that unlikely. But it is a possibility. But either way, even with those legs having been dismantled, they will still reconstruct those faster than they will finish this pad down here. So I think it's too early to figure out whether or not it's going to come to Starbase or not, but there is a third launch mount under construction at that same location. So in my opinion, it's more likely for the third one to come down here instead of the second one.
All right.
Cool. Any last comments or questions that we should address?
I think we're done here.
Cool. Alrighty then. Well, in that case, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap it up. I want to thank everybody for sitting here and watching the show with us today. If you guys haven't done so already, please do us a favor and hit that like button. We try not to ask too many times during the show. I don't think we've actually asked a single time today. So if you haven't done that, we appreciate it. And also want to thank everybody who has supported either by being a member of the YouTube channel or on Patreon. If you guys would like to go through these images yourself, then if you are a member, then you should be able to have full access to those images. And that's especially for all the people who are gifted memberships today. If you haven't ever had a chance to look through those galleries yourself, you should now have access to those, at least while you do have that gifted membership. So definitely take advantage of that if you haven't already. And again, thanks to everybody who has supported, because it really goes a long way with allowing us to continue to do these weekly flyovers, because they are not cheap. And once again, gas prices are going up. So yeah, with that, I guess I will pass it off. And also, don't forget, if you guys want to join us in Discord after this, we'll probably be watching through that presentation from Elon. So yeah, feel free to join us if you would like to after the show. And with that, I will sign off and pass it off to Jake.
Yeah, it's been another fun show. Been a bit of a roller coaster, obviously, with SpaceX deciding to drop that absolutely massive load of new information during the stream. But yeah, it's like I said, we're going to be going through it after this stream, and yeah, I hope to be able to talk to some of you after the stream finishes. And with that, I'll pass it over to BJ.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us again for another great week. Great things to see with exciting tests that have happened recently, and we'll see Flight 4 before we know it. So glad that everyone was able to go, and I'm glad to have been here. Yeah, after all my technical difficulties, but great stuff to see. I'll send it back to Joe.
All right. Thanks, Zach. Thanks, BJ. Thanks, Jake. Appreciate your time and knowledge you're sharing with us today. Thanks, RGV team, for getting these awesome photos. Emlyn for turning the knobs and pushing the buttons. And lovely Astrogen for scheduling and coordinating the show. Thanks, awesome chat. Been a good YouTube chat session today. Appreciate you, all of you generous gifters and donators, and all of your support. With that said, it would be most engines cut off. Hot staging confirmed. Love you. Bye.